Hey guys, welcome back to the second part of the living world. There is great amount of diversity in the living world. A large variety of organisms are found on Earth, and all of it is considered as biodiversity. That is the total number and types of organisms present on Earth. And approximately 1.7 to 1.8 million known and described species are found, but this number is only for the known species. A lot of organisms are still unexplored. We don't know about them, but they also exist. What methodology should be adopted to study these known species, these organisms? Even though they are a small fraction of the total number of types of organisms present on Earth, but they are still a lot. So what methodology should be adopted in order to study them? The first thing that one can do in order to study them is to identify them. You first need to identify the organism, and then you can go on to name them. Naming the organism is only possible when you describe it correctly. But nomenclature poses a problem that local names it vary from place to place. India is a very rich country in terms of its culture. We have different culture, we have different language, and local names of anything, of any living organism, it varies from place to place. Like mango is mango in English, in Hindi, maybe it is something else in Tamil, something else in Kannada. So, according to the place, the name of organism would vary regionally, locally, nationally, everywhere. So, what can be done to name it uniformly? We can adopt a method that can scientifically name the living organisms, right? This is known as nomenclature. Nomenclature means scientifically naming the organisms so that the organism is called by the same name globally everywhere. And to do this, there should be some principles and criteria that everyone should follow and agree. For this purpose, we have International Code for Botanical Nomenclature (ISBN) that lays down the criteria and guidelines for nomenclature of plants. And similarly, we have ICZN International Code for Zoological Nomenclature for animals. Let us learn about binomial nomenclature, which was given by Carolus Linnaeus. Nomenclature is naming the organisms scientifically, and binomial stands for the two components that each of the scientific name will be having, a generic name and a specific epithet. For example, we can consider Magnifera indica, which is a scientific name of mango, wherein Magnifera represents genus and indica represents species. There are other rules that one has to follow in order to name the organism scientifically. These are all universal rules that everyone must follow. First rule is that all the biological names are in the Latin language. Latin is a language of ancient Rome, and no matter where the organism belong to, what is their origin, the scientific names has to be Latinized always, or it should be derived from the Latin language, right? And it should be italicized. It is whenever it is typed, one has to italicize it. If it is handwritten, one should be underlining it. Second rule is that the scientific name, third rule is that when we are writing the biological name, we are not typing it. When we are writing it in handwritten form, the name of organism should be separately underlined, like Magnifera is underlined and Indica is underlined separately. Okay, when printed, it should be italicized to indicate that it is Latin in origin. Finally, the fourth rule is that when you write the genus name, the first word of genus will start with a capital letter and the species name will always start with the small letter. Okay, and if at all the name of author has to appear after the name of species, it should be at the end of biological name, like Magnifera indica and its author's name. And it should be in abbreviated form. For example, Magnifera indica was described by Linnaeus. So Linnaeus, Linn, in the abbreviated form is following the biological name, the scientific name of mango. Next is classification. Now, why do we need classification? What is the purpose of classifying things? Now, suppose that the huge variety of living organisms that we are discussing now, 1.7 to 1.8 billion species, isn't it difficult to study all of them without categorizing them? You have identified them all, you have named them all, but without classifying them, wouldn't it be difficult to study them? You have 10 books. 5 of them belongs to biology and 5 of them belongs to physics. Wouldn't it be wise that you categorize them as biology and physics book? And maybe then, among the biology books, you will be having a textbook for class 10th, a textbook for class 11th and 12th and so on. So wouldn't it be good if you classify them, if you have a proper order, and this is what is followed everywhere, right? Properly keeping things. You have library books full of books and they are all properly ordered so that when you require something, you know that you'll find such and such book at such and such category. So classification is exactly the same thing. The way books are kept in a library, you also have a system, a process that groups and categorizes animals and plants and all other living beings on the basis of few common characters. So it's a process which, because you have already identified the criteria, you have already identified the characters, you have named the organism accordingly, and now you are adopting a process by which you can group them into certain categories on the basis of what characters you have observed in them. Now, when you want to study organisms and classify them, you group them into certain categories which are known as taxa. Taxa could be at different levels. Like for example, animals. This is a taxa. This is a category. And everything that all the animals that you see around yourself, cats, dogs, sheep, goat, cow, cattle, everything, they come under this taxa known as animals. Then you have mammals. Mammals are only those animals that would be having mammary gland and certain other characteristics, right? So mammal is another taxa. All the mammals are animals, but all the animals are not mammals. So this mammal, the taxa, is under the umbrella of animal taxa. And then you have dog, which is another taxa, and only the dogs would fall under this category, right? So taxa include categories at very different levels. Taxonomy is the branch of biology that involves classification of all the living organisms into different taxa on the basis of their characteristics. So you include this taxonomy term is going to include characterization of the living organism, its identification, classification, and the nomenclature process. It all comes under taxonomy. Systematics is another term that is derived from the Latin word systema, and it also means the systematic arrangement of organisms. Later on, the scope of systematics were also uh, expanded to more things like identification, nomenclature, classification, and then evolutionary relationship between the organisms was also included in this. A prerequisite of classifying organism is that one should have the knowledge of characters of an individual or a group of organism. One must have the information about characters of this organism before you place them in certain category or before you group them. This is a basic requirement. Why? Because suppose the organism that you want to classify or group is having photosynthetic ability. You have studied the character, you should also have the knowledge that you cannot place this photosynthetic organism under animals, because none of the animal species has photosynthetic ability, right? So classification, it would involve hierarchy of steps, and each of this step will represent a rank or category. Rank is basically a unit of classification, and it can also be termed as taxa. Taxa for plural and taxon for singular. Taxonomic hierarchy is the accumulation of all the categories together. Like when one have to taxonomically arrange the organisms, categories are known as taxonomic category because the arrangement is taxonomic. And all the taxonomic categories together will form a taxonomic hierarchy. Let us learn about some of the taxonomic categories. The smallest taxonomic category is of species, wherein a group of related individuals with morphological similarity or fundamental similarity would be placed together. For example, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Cerevisiae is the specific epithet, and all the budding yeast, all the Saccharomyces cerevisiae, they are uh, together, they are grouped together because they have the common similarities, they have fundamental similarities with each other. Second category is of genus, where a group of related species are kept with close to each other. I mean, these are the species they which have more characters in common in comparison to the species of another genera. For example, we have Panthera leo or Panthera pardus or Panthera tigris. These are all belonging to the same genera. All of them are panther, but Panthera leo, for example, is lion, Pardus is leopard, and Tigris is tiger. So all three organisms, they are different in terms of their species, but because they have common characters, they are genetically close to each other, they are grouped together as one genus but different species. The next category is of family. Family involves group of related genera. We are going towards the higher taxon now. Okay, species was the smallest. Afterwards, we have genus, and then we have family, which involves a group of related genera, which has less number of similarities as compared to species or genus. Species is a reproductively isolated group, so all of them are same. Genus is having little differences, different genus, I mean, one genus and different species will have little differences between each other. Family, there are even less similarities, but then they also have some common characters, so they are all grouped as one single family. Next, we have another higher taxonomic category is order, which is an assemblage of families. Okay, a group of families that has few similar characters, that has got some common characters, or on the basis of these similarities they are grouped together as one order. Okay, so order and all other higher taxonomic categories, they are identified on the basis of the aggregates of characters. For example, class, which is even higher to the taxa order, this category will involve or will include the related orders. And then we come to phylum, wherein this phylum is used for animals and division is used for plants. So classes that has common characters, they are grouped together as phylum. For example, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, these are all classes that are constituting a single phylum. The highest category is that of kingdom. It is the highest category. All the animals, for example, all the animals are included in kingdom Animalia, all the plants in kingdom Plantae. Now this is to remember that lower is the taxa, there are more similarities between the members. Okay, for example, if you look at the genus level, the members of same genus and different species will have a lot of similarities with each other. But on the contrary, if you go to the higher categories, order level or class level or at phylum level, you will see that the number of similarities are decreasing and number of dissimilarities are increasing. So if a phylum has 5 classes, you will find that the relationship of one class to the other class is there is greater difficulty in establishing the relationship between two taxa. Both of them are classes, but because the dissimilarities are increasing, the similarities are decreasing, you will find that the relationship between the two taxa at same level is difficult to determine. Now, this is a taxonomic hierarchy. First, the highest most category is kingdom, followed by phylum in animals and division in plants. Thereby, we have class, order, family, genus, and finally the lowest category is species. We can learn about the taxonomic arrangement by placing us humans into this hierarchy. We belong to the species, the specific epithet associated with us is sapiens. We belong to the genus Homo, family is Hominidae, order is Primata, class is Mammalia, phylum is Chordata, and kingdom is Animalia. That is all for today. In the next video, we'll talk about taxonomic aids. Stay tuned and please do subscribe to our channel.